Hello artists, let's draw a crystal. So you have this guide in your Google Classroom with these 3 different ideas. I'm going to try this idea at the bottom for my crystal. So I'm going to pull up my document camera and then I'll look down in the corner for my help, my guide. So first let's put our name on our paper and flip it over. Your paper can be a square or a diamond. I just like it as a diamond. I think it's more interesting. I'm going to lightly sketch in the first step of that crystal, which is to draw a rectangle. The next step of that crystal is to draw diagonal lines that cut off the corners of my shape. So what we made, I'm going to erase these parts that we don't need. So erase the corners. We made an octagon, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. We made an octagon with kind of like a couple longer sides. So 8-sided shape. So that's my octagon. I'm going to come in a little bit and repeat that same shape. So I'm just drawing the same lines and I'm trying to stay an even space from the big octagon. So this is all going to be drawing really light because I want to trace this with light oil pastel later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find the corners and I'm going to connect the corner of the small shape to the same corner on the big shape. So each corner of the octagon shape gets connected. So that's my shape and it's pretty light already, but I'm just going to go over it one more time with the eraser to get it even lighter. We don't want it to be gone because we need to see these lines, but I do want it a little less dark so I can trace with my white oil pastel. Carefully go over those lines. We want to make sure we didn't miss anything. It is tricky to see, so if we want to do black instead, that's fine. I just thought I would try white. So carefully going over that with a nice hard pressure. So now we're ready for our tissue paper and our water. So I'm going to make sure my brush is clean. And first I'm just going to paint a little water, clean water, over the whole center of the crystal. Now I'm going to go in rainbow order. So I am putting some red down first in the center. The next step is to get my brush wet again, and I'm kind of like patting and pushing the tissue paper into the paper. When the tissue paper gets wet, the color is going to come off of the paper. So now I'm going to keep repeating that and overlapping each time. It's important that you overlap because then the next color will stick. You can see I didn't have quite enough water here, so this guy didn't want to stick. But we want to have enough water so these stick down without you having to touch them all, because when you have to touch them, then your fingers are going to turn all rainbowy. So with more water, let's just kind of push those pieces so they're flat on the paper, making sure they're really stuck. You can see the orange is already starting to bleed a little bit. So I'm going to keep repeating this process with my rainbow, making sure to overlap with these pieces. And I'm going to pause while I finish my rainbow, and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right, artists, so I have completed my rainbow, and the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just kind of going to push some of these colors to be a little bit bigger. So what that means is I'm taking my brush and I'm touching on top of some of these really wet, kind of like puddly parts of my art. And then I'm just kind of touching my brush outside onto the white space. So hopefully all my colors are gonna bleed and make some nice art. But for right now, we just need to let it dry. And then I'll show you in just a minute what it's going to look like in the end. All right, artists, so now I have my finished result. I have my paper more dry. I don't know that I really like the white oil pastel, so I think I'm going to trace it with black so it stands out a little more. So if you want to keep it white, you could do that, but I think that for me, I don't really like how I can see the pencil lines, so I'm going to go over my lines again with my black oil pastel And then maybe I'll add a little bit of reflection or a couple of lines with my white still. So I think I'm going to add a little bit of white on top here, just a little bit in some of these spots, just like some lines, just to be like a little glare. Maybe if you wanted to add some other lines coming out, you could. But here is a finished oil pastel resist with tissue bleeding.